I just have a brief announcement. Nothing earth-shattering, nothing to concern yourself with that much. But I told Rachel Freed, she's the assistant to the cantor here at Adada Real, and she's teaching a class. She's teaching a class of Hebrew and also trope. And I've taken both classes, so I read Torah and the Bima and all. And I'm just wondering how many of you read Torah really well and would like to learn Hebrew. And she's a very good teacher, very caring. And the class is taught Thursday at 6 o'clock in the evening. And if any of you are interested, I know some of you like, let me see, some of you probably read Torah very well already. But for those of you that want to follow the reading on Shabbat a little better, she can help you with that. So how many of you can read Torah fairly well here? Oh, yeah, I know, the two of you. Well, both of you, though. Well, you're a Hebrew teacher. Can maybe, Warren, you'd like to take the trope class? I don't know. No? Lana, you read Hebrew? Lana? Oh, you don't come here, so it doesn't really. Okay. All right. Well, trope is a beautiful melody, and I'm just. On Sunday, what? Are you serious? Was that at Tony's? Yeah, she said she was going to mention it. And I think we do have two people from the Schmooze. Yeah, thank you. That's very nice. Anyway, I'm just giving a pitch because we need more people in that class. It just can't be two of us. Well, it was, but I think she's adding more. Yeah, she's adding two more. That's great. That's good. Very good. Well, I better just put it over here.
I would if it wouldn't be such a schlep to come here.
It's a schlep to come here?
Yeah.
Well, it is. Well, it's even more of a schlep for me. I live up in Granada Hills.
Kolakabur.
Would you like to, do you read Torah?
No.
Would you like to read right, good morning. The rabbi's running late, so I'm going to go out and look for him. For those people streaming, Rabbi's not here yet, and we don't know why. I checked my emails, my texts, and I haven't gotten anything from him. So we'll just be patient and wait for him.
While we're waiting, I would just like to give you a little reminder of how frustrating it is for the people at home not to be able to hear. So if you have a short question, the rabbi can repeat it. But if you have something to say, because you do have wonderful things to say, please let's include the people at home and come up and use the mic. And when you use the mic, use it like this. That way people can hear. And if you ever watch from home, you will know, oh my goodness, this is terrible. Last week I got a call from Ernie Goodman, and I said, I know. And so I just want to remind you again, please, please, please. Thank you. And we have a missing rabbi, as you notice.
Anyway, I do have an announcement. Rabbi just called me. He said that his son, excuse me. Okay, Rabbi, he said his son had an emergency and to take care of it, but he's on his way here, and he'll be here by 10:30. So, sorry about that. Just continue chatting. I know you like doing that. So, enjoy yourselves. Have coffee, tea. Not me. Coffee, tea, or me. All right. Thank you.
Rosa, can I? Janice, how are you? Okay, all right. Please accept my apology. I had an emergency with my younger son. The end result is he's okay, but it was one of those things I had to rush out immediately and stop whatever I was doing and help him. Rosa, am I okay to teach until 11? Okay, good. I usually stop at 10 up for your break, but you had a long break before I got here, right? Okay, so let's jump right back in. So we're doing the Jews of Libya. That's where we started last week. And we ended up ending last week at the year 1500. And we were talking about all of the different things about the year 1500, or approximately 1500, because it's such a hugely important turning year within Jewish history and also world history. So, tell me again some of the things that happened in 1500 or right around 1500. Okay, so the expulsion from Spain. Okay. Say again. Renaissance, really great. So, yep. So what happens in the Renaissance? Europe is coming out of the Dark Ages, and it's a rebirth, right? So the Renaissance really has three periods: the 1400s, the 1500s, and the 1600s. The 1500s are right at the apex of the Renaissance. Okay, printing press. Protestant Reformation. Yes, Columbus, okay, we'll put him down. So before we continue then, obviously the printing press revolutionizes everything, because up until this time there was no way to get your hands on reading material. Everything had to be done by hand. The printing press changed the entire world in the same way that the internet changed the entire world for all of us in our lifetimes. Protestant Reformation, huge earthquake in Europe, right? Because up until the Protestant Reformation, if you were Christian, you were what kind of Christian? You were Catholic. Martin Luther comes along and proposes something new. Yes, exactly. And it's a revolution within Christianity. Okay, Columbus sails the ocean blue.
Turkish invasion.
Say again.
Turkish invasion of Europe.
Exploring the world. Turkish invasion of Europe. Okay, the Ottoman Turks take over what was the Byzantine Empire. Okay, what's happening in the Jewish world around 1500 other than the Inquisition and the expulsion? Kabbalah, very good. And we have Joseph Caro. Who's Joseph Caro? Good. Joseph Caro writes the Shulchan Aruch. What's the Shulchan Aruch? Set table of laws, good. And so what kinds of laws? What are we talking about?
Well, he kind of explained things in a simple manner. That's what was a set table.
Good. Okay. So, you have to explain things in a simple manner. That's why it's the set table. So, where do we find halakha, Jewish law, explained? We find it in the Talmud and the Talmud, which is the Mishnah, which are the early rulings from the rabbis, combined with the discussions of the later rabbis in the Gemara, and those two sets of writings equal the Talmud. So, if you wanted to find out what's the laws about etrog and lulav, you go to the Talmud and you have to sift through all the discussions, and then finally at the end of all these long discussions, you can find out what the rulings are. Number one, you have to be very learned to get through all these discussions and figure out what they're saying. And number two, you have to have a set of these Talmuds, which wasn't easy to come by. So, Maimonides attacks it first in the 1100s. He writes what's called the Mishnah Torah, which was a code of law. And it was an attempt to take all those discussions in the Talmud and break it down to, this is the law. And you don't have to sift through all those discussions. It's just, if you want to know what the law is, this is the law. The problem with it is that it was very long still, and Maimonides never included citations or footnotes or anything. And so no one knew how Maimonides came up with these ideas. It was just Maimonides says this is the law. So the rabbis were like not happy with that. Then Joseph Asher comes along and he writes a second code called the Arba Turim, the 4 posts. Same problems, too long. Then Joseph Caro comes along around 1500 and he writes a short one. And it becomes the standard law code that is in use right this minute in the Orthodox communities. It's called the Shulchan Aruch. So if you want to find out what the law says, you go to the Shulchan Aruch. If you want to find out, obviously, modern things, they're not in the Shulchan Aruch. You have to go to the responsa literature.
I've never heard of him, and I'm wondering, where did he live?
He lived in northern Israel, which was the center of Kabbalah. And so we have the Shulchan Aruch. Okay. Now, what else do we have? We have 2 more things that I want to talk about. Oh, Nadia. He also lived in Prague. The poem he wrote. Oh. And so he has a poem that's included in the Yom Kippur liturgy.
And what years are we talking
About 1500. Everything is 1500. And there's another big thing that happens in 1500. I'm going to go up here now because I'm running out of room. The Reconquista. Who knows what the Reconquista is?
When the Moors invaded Spain,
When the Moors invaded Spain,
they took over most of Spain.
most of Spain,
But they could not conquer what became out of my heart. In the very north of Spain.
the northern Christian kingdoms.
Yes, and it's I know the name, but
You're okay. Navarre.
anyhow, Reconquista is when that northern part of Spain fringed between Europe and the Mediterranean.
Took over.
They became powerful in terms of manpower.
Right. So the northern kingdoms become powerful.
So they began to fight the Moors. And slowly but surely, they kept on fighting and fighting until finally they conquered the entire Iberian Peninsula, and that was the Reconquista.
Okay, beautiful. So here is Spain. Here is France.
They took over Spain.
Here's northern Africa. Here's Gibraltar. Okay, so what happens is the Moors, who are northern African tribes, a large group of northern African tribes, it includes the Berbers and other tribes, and the Almohads that we spoke about last week with Maimonides, that they conquer Spain. But they don't get all of it. See, here is, yes. Thank you, thank you. So there's Portugal. So there's a section in northern Spain, broken into kingdoms, which the Moors did not conquer. They didn't get into France immediately because of the Pyrenees mountain range. So they come in here at the end of, right before 1500, the 1400s, the late 1400s, Ferdinand and Isabella get married. That's hugely important. And the reason it's important is because within Spain, we had two regions, two big regions, Castile and Aragon, the Kingdom of Castile and the Kingdom of Aragon. Isabella is the heir to the Kingdom of Castile. Ferdinand is the heir to the Kingdom of Aragon. So what happens when they get married? Spain is united. That's huge. And what happens shortly after they're married is the northern kingdoms, under their direction, start invading, just as Cecil said, invading the Moors and pushing them out. And eventually, they push them out completely. So the Reconquista is the reconquering of Spain from the Muslims. And that ends right around 1500. Correct, right around 1492. And like I said, 8 years that far back doesn't make so much. It's just 1500. Bing, 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 bing. And so the last thing is that all of this together, and you can see these are huge world and Jewish events, huge. It ushers in the early modern period of history. So up until this, we had medieval period, or the Middle Ages. You had the early Middle Ages, the mid-Middle Ages, the late Middle Ages, which they sometimes call the High Middle Ages, and then we had the early modern period. And 1500, because so much stuff happens, ushers in the early modern period.
So, Rabbi, I have a question.
Yes.
The printing press, the Gutenberg Bible, which is the Catholic Bible that was printed during that period of time,
Yes.
did the Jewish Talmud get printed, or was that it's still written?
Where are you?
I'm here.
Was what?
I move around. No, I'm just wondering if the printing press affected the Torah or the
One of the
Tanakh.
reasons why the Kabbalah became so prominent 1500 and after is because the printing press came into being. And so Jews then had access to writings that they would never have had. So the printing press, for instance, Kabbalah, one of the many, 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 many innovations within Kabbalah is a new theory of afterlife, reincarnation of the dead. Do Jews believe in reincarnation of the dead? You better believe it. Kabbalistic Jews do. And it may surprise you very strongly that during the Middle Ages, after the printing press and the Kabbalah was brought forth, if you asked a Jew in Europe what happens after you die, the vast majority would say reincarnation. That was the predominant idea. Remember, in our tradition, we have three ideas: resurrection of the dead, the soul goes to earth. The soul goes to God, the body goes to earth. That's from Plato, and reincarnation. And as a Jew, you can decide which of those three you believe in. Any of those three is acceptable because they're all authentically Jewish. Lana?
Okay, the printing press was very important because they were burning Talmuds up until this time. This is also a period, I think, when they were doing the debates between Jews and Christians. So by burning the Talmud, if we didn't have the printing press, once the printing press, there were too many to burn. We wouldn't have the Talmud today.
Very good, very good, very good. Cecil.
Maybe a trivial point, but it's important historically. During the Reconquista, the ruling tribe of the invaders that came from Morocco and conquered Spain were a certain tribe, Almoradis, or I don't remember the name, but during the Reconquista, other tribes from Africa came to fight. They wanted to conquer Spain. So the original conquerors of the Iberian Peninsula found themselves on a two-front war, fighting the Reconquistadores and fighting the new conquerors. And the end result is the Reconquista
Very good,
triumph.
very good. So the Moors were concentrated here in Granada. That was the big city of the Islamic Empire within Spain. And those of you who have been to Spain, possibly you have been to the Palace of Alhambra. It's extraordinary in Granada. Okay, so let's continue now with Libya, because now that we've set up what's going on in the world. Okay, so in 1517 now, there were Jewish families in Tripoli and Benghazi. By 1745 to 1750s, members of the Jewish community arrived from Italy. And remember, we were talking about the anti-Semitic acts within Italy at that time, which caused Jews to flee. During the 18th and 19th centuries, so we're talking about the 1700s and the 1800s, Benghazi had about 400 families, and there were 2 synagogues, and also there was one in Tripoli. And it was a good time for Jews. The Muslims looked favorably upon the Jewish communities. Why? Because the Jewish communities had so much experience in trade and mercantilism, and so they were valued, just like they were all throughout Europe during the Middle Ages. Starting in 1903, there were 14,000 Jews in Tripoli, and there were 2,000 in Benghazi. So, 1900, things were going pretty well. By 1943, wait a minute. In 1911, Libya was colonized by Italy. Remember, it had been Spanish before that. It was colonized now by Italy. And the popes at the time had issued decrees that there were bad Jews, bad anti-Semitism, excuse me, and there was good anti-Semitism. Well, there was good anti-Semitism if it foiled plots by the Jews against others. Really? But that is what the popes said. So, by 1931, there were 21,000 Jews in Libya. Obviously, the Jews left Italy because of the Pope's decrees. And they were mostly in Tripoli, and it was generally pretty good for Jews. Jewish communities were speaking primarily Italian in Libya. All right. In 1939, as we all know, the fascists take over Italy, and there are a number of anti-Semitic bans which are enacted. Jews are fired from the government jobs, they're dismissed from government schools, citizenship papers, and you had to be marked as Jews. And in 1940, Italy enters the war, And so Jewish deportations start in Libya, Nazi-style deportations. By 1941, 25% of the population of Tripoli was Jewish. There were 44 synagogues. That's crazy, huh? In 1942, German troops from North Africa occupied the Jewish quarter of Benghazi, and they deport 2,000 Jews. And they deport them to a concentration camp in Libya, in Cyrenaica, and they have lists of families who were deported. And by June, all the Jews from Cyrenaica were deported. In 1943, Allies liberate the camp. And as you might expect, at this point, the Jewish community is in very, very bad shape. The British repatriate the Jews to Benghazi, and following that repatriation, there are 3,400 Jews living in Benghazi. In 1945, we had many Jews who were killed in a pogrom that was instigated by Arab nationalism. Does anybody know what that is, Arab nationalism? Really, really important for Jewish history. So remember that starting around the 1920s, there are rumblings within the Arab states that there should be an alliance between all of the Arabs. That comes to its strongest point in the 50s and 60s when Gamal Nasser is the president of Egypt. And that's the impetus, ultimately, for the 67 war. Because what happens in the 67 war? The Arab nations went against Israel, kind of, yes, sort of. Anyone? Oh, this is important. We need to know this. Say again. They closed the Straits of Tiran. Oh, okay. Good. Let's talk about this for a second, because this is important information for us. So Israel fought 3 wars to gain and keep its independence, right? We have the 48 War. Once Israel declares itself a state, all of the surrounding Arab countries attack. And for a minute, it looks like Israel is going to be destroyed. But they fight back really, really, really hard, and they win. In the 67 war, Gamal Nasser has, yes? Almost. Good. Ultimately it gets the area that is what is now the West Bank gets created in the 1947 partition plan by the UN. But very good, very good, very good. It's a war when Jerusalem was liberated. Yes. What happened was Gamal Nasser stirs up all the Arab countries against Israel. And remember, Israel then, through its exceptional intelligence, hears and sees, because Nasser is on the radio and he's stirring up and he's telling people, get ready, get ready, get ready. We're going in. We're going to wipe them out. Blah, 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 blah. So what does Israel do? Israel sets up a preemptive attack. Israel goes in and immediately flies over and wipes out the Egyptian Air Force in 3 hours. So that's the second war that gets fought. Israel staged a preemptive attack against the Arabs who were about to attack. Why? Because of Arab nationalism, which had been fomented by Gamal Nasser. And of course, we know the 73 Yom Kippur War was a surprise attack. Okay.
In 67, when Israel did a preemptive strike, the Israeli Air Force destroyed the Egyptian Air Force. They were all on the ground,
Yep.
and they destroyed all the aircraft. So essentially, Israel dominated the air
Yes.
during that war.
Yes, absolutely correct. Israel had air superiority pretty quickly in 1967. And yes, East Jerusalem was captured during the war and reunited so that Jerusalem became a united city again. So this is Arab nationalism. And it's really, it's very, very important because in the years then in 1936 and 1939, there were riots by the Palestinian Arabs within Israel against the British government who was controlling them. In the pogrom, many homes were destroyed. And it was quite a terrible situation. In 1949 to 1951, about 2,500 Jews from Benghazi moved to Israel, and it was a majority of the population. So remember, again, once the State of Israel is established in 1948, can I just go until the next teacher comes? Is that okay with all of you? I feel terrible for coming in late, and I want to make up time with you. Okay, so when the State of Israel is established, I lost my thought for a second. When the State of Israel was established in the 1948 war, many Arabs, Palestinian Arabs, left Israel. And there ended up, and what ended up happening was there was a population exchange. Arab countries kicked out Jews and confiscated their property. Where did those Jews go? They went to Israel because it was a new state for them, right? It had just been proclaimed a state. So Arab countries kicked out the Jews. Israel kicked out some Arabs. They did. It's a fact. Hang on. Other Arabs left on their own. Why? Because the Arab nation said to them, look, we are coming in. We're going to destroy Israel from the face of the earth. Once we do that, you can go back in. But for the moment, get the heck out of there because we're going to go in and level everything. Obviously, we know that didn't happen. So, Israel did kick out some Jews. It did. Israel did kick out some Arabs during the 1948 war. It happened. Look, war is terrible, hellish stuff. And in my opinion, it's a lot of what we're seeing in Gaza right this second. War is a terrible thing. People die. Civilians die. And as hard, and I believe in my heart of hearts, that Israel tries really hard not to target civilians, and they try not to hurt civilians, but civilians get caught up in the violence and they die. It's just how war is, and it's terrible, but it's just the fact of life. Ezekiel, you had a... Perfect. Lana. Was Gaza, which I believe was a part of...
I don't think, were they affected by this?
Were they affected by... Right. Right.
Were they a part of that? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. Yeah. Well, she had the mic, but somehow it wasn't on. Okay, so, yes.
just to follow up on that point, Israel had kibbutzim, at the time very modern kibbutzim, in the area of Gaza. And it was Ariel Sharon, the prime minister of Israel, who forcibly and visibly took the Jews out of Gaza because of the political climate and all of that. So Ariel Sharon created an exodus of Jews out of Gaza, and they left kibbutzim, they left computers, left everything. And what happens when the Palestinians took over the area? They destroyed everything. They broke the
That's
computers.
correct.
It was terrible.
That is correct.
Things that they could have used greatly.
At,
They
at,
destroyed
at
it.
some point earlier in history, Gaza was a gorgeous place. So was Lebanon. I mean, these were beautiful areas in what we now call the Middle East. Clearly not now. So there were 40,000 Jews in the 1940s, and 31,000 of them moved to Israel once the state of Israel gets established. By 67, during the Six-Day War, there are 7,000 Jews in Libya. After the war, there were more riots, obviously, because the Arab nations were hugely upset, and Muslims in general were hugely upset. And out of the 7,000 Jews left, 6,000 of them were airlifted by the Italian Navy to Rome. And the king of Libya at the time, Idris I, sanctioned it and even helped. Of those 6,000, 1,300 went to Israel. First they went to Rome. 1,300 went to Israel. 2,300 stayed in Italy, and the rest went to the U.S. In 1969, Gaddafi comes to power. And by this time, there are only about 100 Jews left in Libya. And Jewish property was confiscated, and all debts to the Jews were canceled. So if Jews loaned money out, then those debts to repay the Jews were canceled. In 1970, Gaddafi declared a day of revenge, which celebrated the expulsion of the Jews and the Italians from Libya, and he made it a national holiday. By 1974, there were 20 Jews left in Libya. And in 2002, the last known Jew, Esmeralda Magrazi, died. And that was the last Jew in Libya. They had, as you saw from our earlier discussions, a thriving, it went through periods of bad times, good times, bad times, good times, bad times. But they had a large Jewish community. And by 2002, all gone. All right, thank you very much for being patient with me today. Again, I apologize for getting here late, but thank you for your patience.
So is it the little one that was ill that night?
The little one had a incident with his car.
Oh,
I had to rush out and
okay,
sort
well.
of save him.
My nephew had to run to the bathroom. He's my Israel, my niece, and
Okay.
they have to have that.
Every time he comes, he has to.
We're gonna see if we can get you a sticker for the car, see if you can drive in and not have to.
It's not that big a deal.
Okay, let me talk to Cindy.
I can manage.
Okay.
Of course you can.
Of all the things in the world, of all the problems I have in the world, that's way
Okay, thank you.
my great
Sometimes there are lines.
and also some Sephardic position. Sorry for taking your time.
I remember the stories. I remember the stories. I don't remember some of the stories. The stories I remember. But when I was a teenager, in my hometown, there were Catholics, lesser number.
Boaz, I'm trying to get to Israel. Like, no, you know, we're working really hard to try and get a group of rabbis to get together to go, rather than, you know.
But that is
So,
not Rabbi Sadek.
but I'm really glad you're here.
No, it's not a problem. Just travel plane and find it.
Yeah.
When he saw Rabbi Goodman, he said, "That's a rabbi? He doesn't have a big beard." And he said, I said, "Wait till you see the next one. She didn't have a beard either."
Right. Okay, everybody. Did everybody get snacks? I know I just did. So I'm not late as Rabbi Goodman had to be this morning. However, I've had vertigo for the last couple of days. Boy, it's yucky, and I'm better today. But please forgive me if I'm not my animated self. First of all, I need to make a correction before we say the blessing for learning. Rabbi Meir and Beria did not live outside the land. They lived in Israel. Rabbi Meir died in Babylonia because that's where he fled after everything happened with regard to his wife, if you remember the story from last week. And then he died there. However, I made a mistake when I was asked about where they were living. They were indeed living in the land, not as they say, chutz la'aretz, not outside of the land. And so I'm correcting that before we move on to our next woman in the Gemara. Any questions that anybody has from last week? Okay, let's say the bracha for learning. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. I hope that our learning together today will be an enjoyable one. I think that you're going to have fun with the texts that I brought about the next woman. The only other woman who's really seriously discussed in the Talmud, and her name is Yalta. That's all we know of her name. She's mentioned several times in the Talmud Bavli, in the Babylonian Talmud. She was also the wife of a rabbi, a Talmudic rabbi, Rav Nachman, and the daughter of a community leader that they called an exilarch. She is described as a strong-willed, free-spirited woman, and we will see that in both of the texts that we read together today. So I hope you'll find it fun, but also enlightening. So she is mentioned like only a couple of times in the Babylonian Talmud, but nowhere else in rabbinic literature. So that means she's not mentioned in the Talmud Yerushalmi. Remember I told you about the fact that we have 2 Talmudic texts, and she's not mentioned in any other rabbinic literature. So Rab Nachman was a sage that was mentioned quite a bit in the Gemara, and he was alive, which means she was alive, around 250 of the Common Era. So what are we at? So that's 2,000 years ago, a little bit more than 2,000 years ago. It says in one of the Talmudic portions, not talking about Yalta, that her father was this great communal leader, and that's it. I mean, that's all I have to say about it. So I think we're going to go straight into the text this morning. So we'll start with the one I titled Yalta Disses Ula. Do you know what disses is? It's a kid's saying, being dismissive of. Just a minute, hold on. No, you can, don't sit down, just. So, did you do a Hatikva at the end of the class today? No, we didn't. So we will definitely be doing that later on. There's one more here. If you're in a couple, please start by sharing, because I don't know how many copies I have of this. Nope. That's it? That's it for this one. Hopefully it'll go around enough.
Talking about women's achievements. That right now, during this attack on Israel, there was a squad of women that found themselves in the kibbutz, and they were the only defenders of the kibbutz. There were like 12 women. At the end of the battle, there were 38 Hamas people dead, and they held their position, and that kibbutz was saved. 12.
You can share that a little bit later on. I read about that too. Is this a leftover?
Yeah.
Okay. So, don't look at it yet. So, please don't look at it yet, because I want to guide you into this and ask you some questions first. So, what would make, in early feminism in the United States, let's say in the 70s, we would talk about like feisty women. And so don't keep reading. I'm a feisty woman. What? There's one right here. There you go. Obviously. So give me an example of what makes a feisty woman, being contrary, a contrary woman. Yeah, I don't know. Contrary to the going societal.
A woman, a strong-minded woman who has a mind of her own, and if she disagrees with somebody, will say it. That's a feisty woman. That's me.
I like that description.
And she will fight to the end for what she believes in.
She will fight to the end for what she believes in. Okay, that's great. So now we are going to take a look at Yalta in a social situation. Oh.
I'll walk around so you can sit.
Oh, great. In a social situation, it starts a few lines down where it says, where it says in English, the Gemara relates. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay. Okay. So before that, it's talking about what you, in the lines that come before that, it's saying that somebody, the husband in the family sends something out in order to send gifts as members of the household so that he can please his wife. So what we're on is this idea that how can the husband please his wife? Which is a nice thing to have happen in the Gemara, right? So who would like to read where the Gemara relates for a little bit? I'm afraid I cannot be the one to continue to carry the mic around all over because I'm going to be too dizzy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, the 11th line. Okay, you got it?
Yeah. The Gemara relates, Ulla happened to come to the house of Rav Nachman.
Okay, so Ulla is just another person. He comes to Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman is a very well-respected rabbi. Go ahead.
He ate bread, recited grace after meals.
You know what grace after meals is in Hebrew? Birkat Hamazon,
Right.
So they're eating and they're doing Birkat Hamazon.
And he gave the cup of blessing to Rav Nachman.
Okay, so, sorry, thanks, Susie. So Ulla is invited to dinner, and leads Birkat Hamazon, because that's something you can ask guests to do. And so when he is finished reciting it, he's got the cup of the blessing, and he hands it, kos, the cup of wine, and he hands it to Rav Nachman. Okay? And what does Rav Nachman say?
Master, please send the cup of blessing to Yalta, my wife.
Aha, right? We're in a text in the Gemara about pleasing your wife. So first of all, before we go on, since I am a lover of Gemara, I want you to always recognize when the things that we hear about the text are not true. So if you have a text right here about this woman Yalta and many other women whose names are not mentioned in the Gemara, and what you see is a whole text that's dealing with mutual respect between this husband and this wife, you need to be able to throw out later when somebody else says, the Gemara's all for men. And it's nasty toward women. The fact is that sometimes there were rabbis who were really terrible about their description of women. But like any other human being in the world, there are some people like that and some people not like that. Rabbi Nachman is not like that. He's very respectful. So first of all, before we go on, thank you for standing there.
Should I stay or not?
No, you can stay. Before we go on, what has Rabbi Nachman asked Ulla to do? Just to reiterate. To send the cup over to his wife as a task of honor, right? But what has Ulla said? What? You want me to hand this over to your wife? Why? There isn't any need to do that. So, read a little bit.
We haven't read that yet.
Oh, wait, hold on. Sorry. Gave the cup of blessing to Rav Nachman. Oh, sorry. Wait.
There's no need.
what line is that on? Okay. All right, so the Gemara relates, Sula happened to come, he ate bread, recited grace after meals, and gave the cup of blessing to Rav Nachman. And Rav Nachman said, Master, please send the cup of blessing to Yalta, my wife. And then, oh, there we go.
Ola responded to him, there is no need, as Rabbi Yohanan said as follows, the fruit of a woman's body is blessed only from the fruit of a man's body, as it is stated. And he will love you and bless you and make you numerous, and he will bless the fruit of your body.
Okay, so Rabbi Yochanan relates what was said. So what was said is women's blessing comes only by way of
The man.
man, and he will love you and bless you and make you numerous and bless the fruit of your body. Okay, so then it goes on and it says that the Gemara infers through Ula. What is this? Go ahead and read it.
He will bless the fruit of her body was not stated. Rather, he will bless the fruit of your body, masculine singular.
Uh-huh.
For his wife to be blessed with children, it is sufficient to give the cup to Rav Nachman.
Okay, so Rabbi Yochanan, we've heard about before. He's a very famous rabbi in the Talmud, and he is explaining Ula's perspective. So, how is it that it's okay for the cup to be given to Rav Nachman instead of Yalta? Because he's a man and everything. Rabbi Yochanan is one of those guys that, well, I've done text study with many of you about Rav Yochanan. Rav Yochanan is one of those guys who we wouldn't particularly be excited to have a conversation with regard to the question of genders of any kind. So he is trying to explain why it was sufficient to give the cup to Rav Nachman, the one who is responsible for all the good that happens to his wife. But did Rav Nachman say that? No. He looks at it completely differently. Okay. So now what we've got is a number of different things in the discussion that's going to say why it is okay that Ula did this. So you can sit down now. This is a little bit more difficult for us. Yes.
What does it mean when it says the fruit of the woman?
The fruit. The fruit of a woman's body is children, their offspring. So what you have is Rabbi Yochanan, who is himself a very quirky guy. Who studied Rabbi Yochanan with me? Rabbi Yochanan is an oddball, just an odd person. A very brilliant person, but an odd person. I just want to know who has studied Rabbi Yochanan with me, because if you haven't, I'm going to bring him next week, and you're going to get to meet him in person, in the text. So is that okay? I think, Warren and Melinda, I think you've read some Rabbi Yochanan with me. Do you have a hesitation about taking a look at it again, or what? No? Okay. So, this opinion that Rabbi Yochanan state was taught in a Baraita. Do you remember what a Baraita is in the Gemara? So the Baraita is a piece of rabbinic text that probably was in another whole book somewhere, but the whole book is lost. But that element of the text is still existent within another text. So they call it something that will open up that will shed light onto the text, but it comes from somewhere else. Rav Natan says, from where is it derived that the fruit of a woman's body is only blessed from the fruit of a man's body? As it is stated, and he will bless the fruit of your body, he will bless the fruit of her body, was not stated in biblical text. Okay? So if it wasn't said about women, we're okay with it. Rabbi Yochanan, who isn't even there at the dinner table, this is just part of the discussion, is trying to say to Rav Nachman through the text with Ulla, you don't have to do it. You don't have to hand the cup to the woman. You don't have to do any of that. Okay. The Gemara relates that meanwhile, Yalta heard Ulla's refusal to send her the cup of blessing. Okay? So Yalta was the daughter of the community leader and was accustomed to being treated with deference. And so she arose in a rage, entered the wine storage, broke 400 barrels of wine, and afterward, Rav Nachman says, I would imagine a little bit more quietly, what does he say? Ulla, you better darn well send her the cup. So Ulla sent Yalta a different cup with a message saying that all of the wine in this barrel is wine of blessing. Although you did not drink from the cup of blessing itself, you may at least drink from the barrel from which the cup of blessing was poured. So he's getting a little nervous about what he's done, but it's not the actual kos. It's a cup that comes from somewhere else in the same barrel. The rabbinic texts say that she broke 400 barrels of wine, but she did not make 400 barrels of wine pour out. So in other words, they didn't lose all 400 barrels of wine. But you can imagine an angry woman going, womp, 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 like all the way through the wine cellar, because she was angry that the person who was a guest and in her house, at her table, had singularly made a decision that her husband didn't even want to do. Any comments about this before we go to the rest? It's pretty funny, isn't it? But I feel like going, yes! That's good.
I feel like saying it's a big overreaction.
Oh, please say that.
I think she overreacted.
She did get her point across. So, yes, Shakespeare said, hell hath no fury like a woman's scorn. So honestly, we don't always know when we're studying rabbinic literature, when we're studying Gemara, if it's exactly the way it happened. There's a point being made here in this text, and it's an important point from the perspective of anyone who studies Talmud or any other rabbinic literature. The important thing isn't whether it's exact. did she slam 20 things? They have a message to send out. So what's the message that they, look, remember last week we talked about how one of the great things about Gemara and rabbinic literature as a whole is we do not get rid of anything, right? Many other cultures do away with things that they find within their texts that they don't like. And so we would get to a generation 2,000 years later and not have the actual information was in that original rabbinic text. But we are tremendously fortunate as Jews to have that not been the choice of our teachers in previous generations. So we have almost everything. So what's the message that the rabbis are allowing to have stay in the Gemara? Janice, hi, you're back. Welcome. Welcome back. Anyway, what's the message here?
We are all human and we make mistakes and we have to own up to it. You can't whitewash what has happened in the past and say it never happened like we're doing today in history with some things. You have to tell the facts.
Okay, so that's telling the facts is why the Rabbanim of the generations of the Talmud didn't erase things. But why did the rabbis want this information about Yalta to be as it was, where Ulla has to say, sorry, let me give you another glass. It's from the same cask. It's from the same barrel.
So we played don't demean women and we treat women with respect. And I'm going to add one thing. It's probably the reason why it's traditional, at least it was in my house or my son's house, that the Kiddush wine that my husband has blessed is given to the wife first. That's the first person you give it to.
What else do we have on Shabbat that I have it, right? Susie's reminding me about the Michael. And so does anybody know what there's a tradition in traditional Judaism that one does on Friday night at the Shabbat table in addition to Kiddush and Motzi and lighting the Nerot, what is it? You just spoke, so I'm going to somebody. Do you want to say, Janice?
One tradition is that it's the woman who lights the candles.
Oh, that's a good one. There's another one that I'm thinking of also. Let me go over to somebody else. Hold on. Do you want to do it?
No, not
Good, it's better that I walk anyway.
It's the poem Woman of Valor.
So, Eshet Chayil, yes. So the husband is supposed to sing that song. It's not the woman who stands there and says, look at all the things that I do. It's the husband who's supposed to sing that song. So, we often are in the position where we have to say what we do. However, this is built in to Jewish life. Now, I know it's not always, in fact, a lot of the time, not egalitarian. Like, Boaz, it was new for you to see a female as a rabbi, right? No, it wasn't? Oh, I thought you said it was. So it's great. You have that experience of seeing a lot of different rabbis. But not everybody does. And so, some of these things are interesting changes. Okay, so let's go on with her to finish up. Now, she is going to really let him have it. Because not only is she a rabbi's wife, but she is the daughter of an exilarch, a community leader. And so, what does she say? She sent him a stinging response. From itinerant peddlers, Ulla traveled regularly from Eretz Yisrael to Babylonia and back. So she's saying, you're just a peddler. You're at my table. From you come meaningless words, and from rags come lice. So I think then, Los, we do have a piece here where we see what the personality of Yalta kind of is. So maybe this is the point where you say she kind of went overboard and said, you're going to try and tell me what I am worth? No, thank you. As far as I know, you're the guy who takes peddler's goods all over the place. So she was being, what do you call that? She's being very vindictive, but she's also being, I don't know, what do you call it? She's out of control, but she also comes from a place that from a mind place where she thinks that because of her background and her life experience that she's superior to another person. Now, it doesn't look like, when the rabbis talk about this, it doesn't look like she did anything like that when he was sitting at the table. Because he's a knowledgeable person, Ulla, and it wasn't until he pushed her buttons, he did that the wrath of Yalta comes out. Okay. Rav Asi said, one may not speak over a cup of blessing from the moment he takes it in his hand until he drinks it. Okay, so which Rav Asi is kind of saying, okay, Yalta, enough is enough. You've got that cup of blessing in your hand now. Shut up. So anybody have anything to say about this text? I think it's fun. Was it fun?
Well, it really drives home the message
Yeah, what I have to say, to waste 400 barrels of wine is what a waste.
What a waste of the wine. Right.
I'm just curious if Ulla learned a lesson and he changed. It sounds like he was just reacting to her, and then he'd go his merry way and continue with disrespecting women. I don't know if he learned anything. And she was very spiteful, but she wanted to send a message to him, and I don't know if it worked or not, unless we have another story about Ulla.
We don't have another story. I don't have another story to share today about him. I do have another text about Yalta. What time are we at? Oh, good. Yay. All right. So how is everybody doing? What I really want to ask you is, I was a little nervous about bringing Talmudic texts to the class this year, because last year we did Jews in California. It's a lot more history and that kind of thing. I just want to do, before we move on to the next text, I just want to find out if this has been interesting for you, or if there would have been something else you'd rather be doing. I really want to hear. Okay, so now we get to the next text then. Let me know what your feelings are. You don't have to say them aloud or, to a lot of people, but I'm here for you. Thank you. Hold on. You may, absolutely. Okay, so before we go on to this, thank you. Before we go on to this text, Yalta challenging the rabbis, let me tell you a little bit more about her. Thank you. So in another text that I didn't bring, when her husband was treated with disrespect by a younger colleague, she told her husband how to protect himself. That's in the Babylonian Talmud in Kedushin. Dissatisfied with an answer given her by one rabbi, she sought out another rabbi for a better answer in Tractate Nida. Once, when she told her husband that she wanted to taste the equivalent of meat cooked in milk, he had udders prepared for her, a foodstuff prohibited by many of his colleagues. Because if you eat the cow's udder, then you're getting a taste of something that gave milk but is still meat, right? So if you're interested in any of those texts, I can bring those too. Her husband in Tractate Beitzah allowed her to be carried on a litter, like a held sitting space that usually had a cover over it for royalty. So he allowed her to be carried in a litter on Shabbat, an act prohibited by many colleagues. Why would many colleagues not want somebody to be carried by others on Shabbat? It's working on the part of the other people. And what do we have in the Torah about that? On the seventh day, who rests? Everybody. Even your animals, your servants, your slaves, anybody that you had during that time, everybody rests. But he found a way around that in order to allow her to be carried on Shabbat. And so let's go into this one. This one is where she tries to confuse the rabbis by continuing to ask them questions about things that she really isn't sure of, but she doesn't want to just let it go. So somebody want to take a mic and read the beginning of this? We got it.
Where do you want me to start? Gemara, Yalta said to her husband, that one? Where do you want me
Yalta challenging the rabbis.
Where's that?
On this text?
Well, I have this one. Where is it here?
Yeah, that's it.
And where? Where do I
The
start?
beginning.
Okay. Gemara. Yalta said to her husband, Rav Naaman, now as a rule, for any item that the merciful one prohibited to us, he permitted to us a similar item. He prohibited to us the consumption of blood, yet he permitted to us a consumption of liver, which is filled with blood and retains the taste of blood. Likewise, God prohibited sexual intercourse with a ministrating woman, but permitted sexual intercourse with one's wife while she discharges the blood of purity.
Okay,
Yeah,
let's
what is
stop
that?
right there. Let's stop right there. Okay, so she's, yes? Yeah, on their wedding night. Yeah, so she is starting by throwing out there, when she's talking with her husband, Rav Nachman, which also means they talked over Jewish law. In Talmud, a lot of times, fathers study with their daughters. Husbands study with their wives. So this isn't an unusual thing, but she's bringing up stuff. She's going, come on. We have all of these things, but there's something on the flip side of it. So why do we have this, where we're told not to do something, and then the next time we're given something very similar that we're allowed to do? So, she's right about liver, right? So she was right about liver. You have to really, if you get liver of any kind, whether it's beef liver or chicken liver, to keep kashrut, you basically have to broil the heck out of it so it doesn't have any blood left in it. But if you're talking about a time back in the, and now we have ovens, like different kinds of ovens than they used to have. So what she's saying is we're not allowed to eat blood, but we can eat liver, and we can never get all the blood out of that liver, so why are we allowed to eat that liver? And then, of course, the other thing about blood. Okay, keep going.
During a particular period after giving birth, even if she experiences a flow of blood, she is not rendered ritually impure and remains permitted to her husband by Torah law. Furthermore, the Torah prohibits the consumption of the forbidden fat of a domesticated animal, but permitted the fat of an undomesticated animal, which has the same flavor. It is prohibited to eat pork, but one may eat the brain of a shibuda fish, which has a similar taste. I don't know anything about a shibuda.
I have no idea.
That's a good question.
It's a type of fish that they had that we don't have.
Okay. One may not eat giruta, a non-kosher fish, but one may eat the tongue of a fish, which tastes similar.
I don't know how she knows they taste
The unusual
similar.
fish. Wow.
I don't know how she knows, but maybe from other people who say, "Oh, this tastes like this."
She's a very bright woman, I tell you.
Yes.
Okay. Likewise, the Torah prohibits sexual intercourse with the wife of another man, but permitted one to marry a divorced woman in her previous husband's lifetime. The Torah prohibits sexual intercourse with one's brother's wife, and yet it permits one to marry his yevama,
I'll tell you.
his brother's widow, when the brother dies childless.
Okay, so there is a whole series of law in Judaism that's biblical, not Talmudic, about what happens when your husband dies without you having any children from him. Do you remember this?
Yes, right.
Okay. So when that happens, you are a yivama, and that means that that the brother of your husband gets first dibs on marrying you. The woman is not forced to do so, however. She can go through a tradition called chalitza, a very interesting one, where she makes him take off his shoe and she spits and then says, "No, I do not want to marry you," and then that's that. But what Yalta is saying, you can't actually have intercourse with the wife of another man, but you can marry the divorced man in her previous husband's lifetime and your brother's wife, yet that's exactly who you're supposed to go to afterwards. So go ahead and finish this part.
Where did I leave off?
Torah prohibits...
Oh, okay. Likewise...
Down at the very bottom of that page.
Finally? Finally, the Torah prohibits sexual intercourse with a Gentile woman, but permitted one to marry a beautiful woman who is a prisoner of war. Oh, my God.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, he also concluded, the Torah prohibits the consumption of meat cooked in milk. I wish to eat a dish that tastes like meat cooked in milk. Upon hearing this, Rav Naaman said to his cooks, "Roast udders on a spit for her." The Gemara asked, "But didn't we learn in the Mishnah that one must tear the udder first?" Rav Naaman did not tell his cooks to tear the udders. The Gemara answers, that requirement was stated only with regard to cooking in a pot, not roasting. Oh my God.
So he must have had them roasted for her.
The Gemara asks, but isn't it taught in the Baraita cited above, an udder that one cooked and its milk is permitted? No. An udder that one cooked and its milk is permitted?
Yeah.
This indicates that after the fact, yes, it is permitted, but one may not roast it ab initio without tearing it.
Yeah,
What does that
so
mean?
if you go ahead and eat that, then okay, past tense. But if you're getting ready to prepare it, rip it. Why rip it?
Yeah, why rip it?
Yeah, to let whatever parts of milk are still in it out. Okay.
Okay, what does ab initio mean?
From the outset. Ab
All right.
initio means from the outset.
Okay. The Gemara answers, the same is true even of roasting ab initio. It is permitted. And the Tana of the
Tana
Barai,
is
what's that?
the Tana is a first generation of Talmudic rabbis.
Oh. And the Tana of the Baraita uses this language since he wants to teach in the latter clause a stomach.
I don't know. That's where I.
Well,
cut
we
it
don't
off.
know. To
We
be
don't need to know.
continued.
Okay. So before we close, what was Yalta? Think about what Yalta's point was here. She's sitting and she's studying with her husband. So what do you think all of her challenges or questions or whatever are about?
I think she's like the devil's advocate. On one hand, you have this. On the other hand, you have that. That's what they do in law school also. They always, what if?
What
The other
if?
way. What if?
Okay. So what she said was, this is the same thing that they do in law school. It's a what if question, challenging back with regard to the law. Anybody else have an idea of why Yalta?
I don't know if this is.
You can say whatever you want.
Okay. No. What I was saying is that maybe she was presenting this, as you say, as a challenge to her rabbi husband and looking to him to see what kind of answer he might come to these challenging questions.
Right.
Yeah.
But we just heard before we started here with this last text, all the different things Rav Nachman did to make Yalta's life easier, right? Well, people don't usually carry people on Shabbat, but I will allow you to be carried on Shabbat, one of them, right? Yeah, people don't usually eat udders so that they can taste meat and milk together, but I'll try to make that happen for you. So what's your conclusion about
Respecting her.
yeah, respecting her? Okay, he's a loving husband. He's trying to please his wife.
He wants to keep all his wine.
He wants to keep all his wine.
Most of these questions were about food, and it's a woman that cooks, and she knows these things. What are the, I mean, I shouldn't say that because there are men that cook.
Yeah. She knows about a lot of these things, some of these things. I think that with Bruria that we read last week, there are really positive things, not just about Bruria, but about the stories. And these women are very learned and very well respected in their society. But along with that, in the society that's 2,000 years old, comes a little bit of tension in both of those cases. Now, Rav Nachman's way of dealing with that is to be very solicitous, to be very kind, and concerned and trying to do what his wife will be happy with. In the case of Bruriah and Rabbi Meir, it goes a different direction when he feels pushed more than he can handle. He does a vile thing that affects both of them. But then again, she does a pretty vile thing as well if it's the truth. So what we're seeing in these rabbinic texts is a great deal of respect for the intellect and the questions and the actions of these women, with a catch. The catch is that it's not easy to do during that time, and there were always things that would come up that were somewhat problematic. But both of these men really respected the intellect and Jewish knowledge of their wives. So that's where we end for today. Thank you very much. So glad to have everybody here, including Boaz, as a visitor. And yes.
Rabbi, may I share something?
Oh, please do share what you were going to share, I guess.
Since we are talking about women's achievements, I'd like to share with the class something that happened recently within this last week. A squad of IDF soldiers, it's about 10 to 12 people. It was a women's squad led by a woman who was a lieutenant colonel, was sent to a kibbutz in the northern part of Israel that was under siege, and they were the defenders. So we're talking about 10 or 12 women led by another woman, a lieutenant colonel, and it was a terrible battle. At the end of the battle, when reinforcements came, there were 38 Hamas men dead. And the squad, I did not read that they suffered, the Israeli IDF women did not suffer any casualties because it was not reported. So you have 12 fighters, women, doing away with 38 attackers, and they eventually broke. Eventually, the fight ended.
Look it up.
Dan was born at 25 years old who alone defended the whole kibbutz.
And all the women survived.
Yes.
Okay, so as is our tradition now since starting MID, we're going to stand and conclude our learning with Hatikva because we are constantly linked with our friends, our family, our people in Israel. I'm waiting till everybody's ready. Ladies in the back. Kol od balev penima nefesh Yehudi homiya ulfatei Mizrach kadima ayin litzion Sophia od lo avta tikvatenu Hatikva shnot alpayim liotam chofshi be'artzenu Eretz Zion Yerushalayim liotam chofshi be'artzenu Eretz Zion Yerushalayim. Have a good week. Have a peaceful week. We wish for only good things in Israel.
Amen. Yeshika. Thank you.
No, a table.
actually.
I may go to
For
the
the
doctor,
inner ear.
but one of the problems is it's so hard to get an appointment.
Tell me about it,
And
yeah.
then once I have the appointments, because this has
It's
happened
gone.
to me before,
It's
it's
gone.
gone.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
good luck to you with
Thank
that.
you so much.
Because I know how awful that is.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
pretty
And guys,
darn,
I do so enjoy all this. I've never had any education, you know.
Wait, yeah,
I've never had any Jewish education, so I'm really enjoying it.
I'm glad you are.
Yes.
You're very good at you're a very good participator. It's really wonderful.
I went to college as an adult because I was raised, you know, I was raised back in Brooklyn. My mother was in the you're going to be a secretary like your sister. College
Wasn't in the cards.
no. And in high school, this is back in Iraq, my advisor said, you need to go to college, you know, because I was an Arab student law. I was a good student. And I said, when? When am I going to go? I have to go to work. He said, you can go to night school. And I laughed. Well, make a long story short, we came to California, you know, and everything was fine. And I got bored, and I wanted to work after the kids were in school. I was married at the time, I divorced now. And I got a job at Down College in Texas, and they encouraged their people to
Go
take
take
classes.
classes.
And if you take a class on their time, a 3-hour class, you only have to make up an hour and a half. So I had never had any college. I thought, okay, going to college, I have to be smart. And I was very apprehensive. My very first class was the role of women in history, in the United States history. I loved it. One class led to 2, led to 3. Before I knew it, I was getting my AA, going to school, transferred to Tucson. I was married at the time, going to school at home. I got my BA in less than 7 years in communications. I like to talk. And I didn't do anything with it for years. And finally, poor job choices, different changes in administration. I became a substitute school teacher. But I love to talk and I'm a good communicator. So that's my story.
You certainly are.
Yeah. Well, thank you again.
Okay. Should I go to the car? It's up to you, whatever. I mean, it's not open, so. No, I know. Okay. Yeah, whatever you